40inbox.com, and we're going to be checking out this article called "I'm a Traditional Wife Who Doesn't Work or Pay Bills. I think all women should care for the home while their husbands work because equal marriages are unnatural and unhappy." So let's check this out. And feel free to give your thoughts about this as well. So, a woman who believes that equal relationships are not natural has revealed that her husband gives her a percentage of his earnings every month so she doesn't have to work. Now, that's kind of interesting that like he would give her a percentage of that. But I guess if you guys have like an open discussion as to like what your expectations are when it comes to marriage before this even happens, and this is what you basically agree on from the get go, I don't think there's really anything necessarily wrong with this if they both agree to it. So, Linda Andrade from California appeared on a recent episode of Truly's Love Don't Judge to explain her lifestyle. The 23-year-old proudly stated how she has never paid a bill in her life before declaring that bills are irrelevant to her. I'm not gonna lie, wouldn't that be nice to just like wake up and go every day without really ever worrying about bills, period, ever? Linda, who once dreamed of being a doctor, explained that while partner Ricky, 27, is raking in a six-figure salary, she stays home to cook and clean. Now, my question is like, say that you are in a position where you're making 150 something thousand dollars a month. Would you even want your family member, your wife, etc., to like cook and clean at that point? Like, is it even really worth the time for her to do that? Like, to me, it would almost feel like it would be better for you to just outsource that so that you could just spend more time enjoying time with your wife. But I mean, I guess if she's just like a stay at home mom, I guess there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't even think that they have kids yet. So the couple who first met after Linda joined a gym where Ricky worked as a health coach had been together for nearly 8 years. They tied the knot when Linda was just 19, and she quickly fell into the role of being a stay at home wife. He was making so much money that I didn't need to work and it was making more sense for me to stay home, she said. Ricky claimed that he makes more than $150,000 each month working as a real estate investor who also has investments in stocks and cryptocurrency. So again, if you're making like $150,000, if you have a wife and you just want to basically have her as a stay-at-home wife, you could definitely do that. You could definitely afford that with that type of monthly income. Technically speaking, you could do that at a much lower income. Like this is where like you gotta be like in a situation like if you are wanting a stay-at-home wife, right? If that is what you want your life situation to be in, then you gotta make sure that you, your wife, and potentially your kids or future kids can all survive on one income. If you all can survive on one income, then go ahead and do that. Just understand that is going to put a lot of financial burden solely on the shoulders of the husband, good or bad. And not to mention, you also got to keep in mind that when there's that level of disparity in terms of like finances, if the husband ends up being an abusive husband, that gets into a very dark position because then the wife doesn't feel like she's actually safe to potentially leave the husband because she is completely 100% financially tied to the husband, like where all of her resources literally comes from the husband. Now, that isn't always the case as to what happens in that type of situation, but it happens enough to where people need to be aware, like, hey, that is a possibility where you could end up being in like a potentially very hazardous relationship where you might get abused, financially abused in that type of situation. Let's see. He revealed that the couple have a traditional marriage where he makes the money and Linda takes care of the home. The jet setting couple has three homes: an apartment in Dubai, a condo in Orange County, and a house in Las Vegas. Linda, who was originally born in Jordan but relocated to the US when she was just 2 years old, said, I believe that modern relationships that do 50-50 are unhappy is not natural. I have never paid a bill in my life. I don't even know how to pay the mortgage. Bills are so irrelevant, honestly, they're irrelevant to me. Now again, like this type of situation can work for like a lot of people and has have worked for a lot of people, but you got to set the expectations like straight up front, right? It's like, okay, I want to have like a stay-at-home wife. I want you to be the stay-at-home wife. This is my expectations out of it. What are your expectations? And can we like agree on basically like the terms, right? Because what people kind of forget is like marriage is basically like a business contract. You're basically entering into a business contract when you get married, right? So if you set your expectations from the very beginning, it just makes things a lot simpler, right? A lot easier. It's like, okay, my role is to be the breadwinner and to take care of you whenever you want to be taken care of. And the other person's responsibility is to take care of the home, etc., other duties, whatever they describe, you know? Let's see. She continued, I personally love doing household chores because I love taking care of my husband. I spoil him, I cook him his favorite meals, and I make sure the house is clean. I hire a maid for the cleaning for the most part. So technically, she's not really cleaning, she's like managing the cleaning. Linda said it had once been her dream to be a doctor, but as of right now, my focus is on my marriage. She continued, it does take a lot of trust in a relationship for you to give up your dreams and give up everything to take care of a man, but I don't have any fears about that. In return, Ricky gives Linda a percentage of his earnings each month. The social media star now regularly flaunts her wealth online, where she has faced fierce criticism over the relationship dynamic and has been branded as a gold digger and spoiled brat who brings nothing to the table. But again, like, I think it really just depends on, like, what were the expectations from the very beginning. Like, for example, if you were to enter a relationship with the expectation that when you guys get married, it'd be like a 50-50 type of situation, but then it ends up turning into something like this, there could be some issues. But if you were like, hey, I am interested in like dating you, that will lead to marriage in this kind of context, to me, it's not really that big of a deal, right? As long as they have like a clear understanding. It's just that she really puts herself in like an odd position where like if all of your money comes like from your hubby, if you want to leave, it's going to be pretty hard, right? It's going to be pretty hard and it's going to be a very controlling type of relationship potentially. Not always, but potentially. But also, they do, I think, live technically in like California, so it's like, wait, right? California? I'm pretty certain they said, yeah, Orange County is pretty much where they probably live most of the time. So, I think the divorce laws are very favorable for females in California, so she could probably get a lot of money if they were to get divorced. So Linda's father, Fawad, pictured together, has tried encouraging her to get a job of her own, as he too had once hoped she would go to medical school. Yeah. So the couple have faced a slew of hate, including claims her husband is going to leave, cheat, and abuse her. She has also received questions about when she is going to stop spending her husband's money. What people need to understand, in the eye of the law, when you get married, regardless if the money is in a joint account or not, that money that he makes is technically her money, right? There is no like splitting things, like which is why I've never understood why if you were to get married, people end up just like splitting their finances. Is like, hey, you might think that you're splitting your finances, but in reality, if you were to get divorced, all of that money is both of your money. Let's see. Linda insists that the pair met before Ricky had money and is not taking him for all he is worth. Linda has regularly hit back at the claims via her TikTok account, with one particular video asserting, "When people say I'm dumb for relying on a man for my livelihood, but they rely on a job for theirs." But even Linda's father, Fuad, has tried encouraging her to get a job of her own, as he too had once hoped she would go to medical school. He told the program, "When Linda told me she is going to be a stay-at-home wife, it did not sit well with me. I am worried about power imbalance in the relationship. I don't like it." Now, that is a very smart father who is truly worried about his daughter, right? Because, like I mentioned, the biggest issue when it comes to this sort of like relationship is more so that the financial burden is going to be on the husband solely, and he's letting her basically have access to money, right? That is a huge power dynamic, right? That is like very one sided. Man, that's like super odd. Like, for example, it would be a completely different power dynamic if, like, let's say that you had like a relationship like this, but you didn't give her a percentage. Is like, let's say that you owned your own business, but you took home like $20,000 a month after tax or whatever, right? So that's your income, and you put that into a joint account that your wife or partner has access to. Okay? That's where the power dynamic is equal, right? It's a little bit closer, it's a little bit safer for both parties, right? Because then you basically pretty much know that like all the money that's being spent on pretty much anything within the household, etc., is right there. Like you can see all the transactions. There's no like surprises. Like it's very hard to potentially like cheat technically or all that kind of stuff, or like have like financial infidelity or people hiding money when the money's coming in to a joint account and you guys are both spending from that joint account, because it just makes things very open and honest between one another, and there's not like a huge disparity in like power, like financial power, because it's all right there. Like for me, if I were to get married, that's how I would set it up, where you would have a joint account where you guys put the money in, and that's where you guys spent it. But I understand that people end up getting screwed over, divorces happen, etc. Let's see. Let's see some of these comments. Says the 23-year-old who's still got a lot of growing up to do. At 23, I was a married mother of two and a qualified nurse. I was a grown up, but would have loved to have stayed at home. That's not a trad wife, that's a trophy wife. I see this person says, my wife worked in the business world before we were married, and once married, she happily took care of the house, her children, and me. Never complained once and was happy to not have to leave the house each day, commute, endure office politics, deal with the public, and so on. Women these days are taught that fulfillment only comes through work outside the home, when the most important work that could ever be done is with the family. 34 happy years in and counting. Hmm. If it works for them, it works for them. That's the beauty of a relationship. It's whatever works for the parties involved. Yeah, I kind of agree. If it works for them, it works for them. It's just like there's just so many potential downfalls that like you gotta be like there's so many problems if you go down this route, right? One, if she has no experience with like paying bills or like any experience wanting to like deal with bills, etc., or understanding any of that, then as like the husband, you have to basically set things up in a way where when you pass away, she is taken care of, where she doesn't even have to think about that, which technically you could do, right? Like you could technically set up a trust that basically pays her a monthly income that she doesn't really ever have to worry about anything, and also like have an accountant on like retainer that gets paid by the trust that takes care of all of her like financial responsibilities, etc. Like I mean there are ways to do it, but it just gets super sketchy, right? It's like I don't understand why you would necessarily want to be in a relationship where someone is so financially illiterate by choice and will want to stay financially illiterate by choice forever, right? Like that is like a scary situation because I would be worried. Let's say you were to get married, I would be worried about like the kids and like knowledge base in terms of like financial literacy if I were to pass away, and this is her viewpoint on money. Like it's a scary potentially thing. It's like I don't know. I would be a little bit worried about this because there's so many things that could go wrong, but technically speaking, they can afford it. Like they can definitely afford it if that monthly income level is correct. And the thing is, what many people don't understand, and I believe I mentioned this earlier in this video, but you can have like a stay at home wife, stay at home partner making a lot lower income. Like if you're making 4K, 5K a month after tax, you could probably do that depending on your expenses, right? Because this is the problem. Like so many people have lifestyle creep or just have so much debt that even if they wanted to go down this path, they could not, financially speaking, because they have like two or three cars that they bought with debt. They have no money in their savings account. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They got student loan bills. They got credit card debt. It's just like non-stop payments going out. But if you were debt free, right, and you were having a reliable source of income, even if it's like 40K a year after tax, you could have a stay at home partner in that situation because your expenses isn't crazy, meaning that you don't have to make a crazy amount of money to be able to have that type of lifestyle. The problem is people tend to always want the whole like keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like for example, you might be able to live this type of lifestyle as like having like a stay-at-home partner, but you're probably not going to be able to buy a brand new car. You're probably not going to have like be able to buy a really nice home. You're probably not going to have multiple vehicles. You may not be able to buy your kid their very first brand new car, right? You may not be able to provide your kid with, financial security when it comes to paying for their college. But there are ways to technically have this sort of lifestyle where you could be the sole earner and have a partner that doesn't work financially speaking, right? but like they could like stay at home, take care of the home, etc. Be like a stay at home, whatever. Like you could have that set up, but this really only works if both parties have the same mindset when it comes to like finances, right? Like you can't have this like stay at home wife partner if like let's say that you are someone who like really cares about finances and you want to save money and you have like financial goals of having like an emergency fund and eventually retiring when your partner who's not bringing in income wants to just spend all of the money and then some that you bring in, which I've seen before. I've seen people where they are the sole owner and they're bringing in really good money, but the partner that doesn't bring in any money is literally spending every single dime and then some. Like that is a horrible situation because the only way to get yourself out of that situation is for that person who's not bringing in money is to stop spending the amount of money that they're spending and also get a job to pay back what they spent. Like it gets into like a really bad situation. Like so this again works ideally if you have the same mindset. If you both want to like be financially set after a certain amount of time, then it could work. It's like this same thing with like having similar goals or viewpoints or values when it comes to like politics, right? Like you don't necessarily want to be married to someone who has the exact opposite viewpoint in politics or religion, right? Does it make sense for someone to be like a Christian and then an atheist combined? Like, does that make a good match? Probably not. Does a Democrat and a Republican match? Probably not, right? So that's something to really think about. Like, and a lot of people don't actually think about that, and those are some pretty big issues. So it's really like a values issue. If you guys got the same values, it works out. If not, it's never going to work out.